Wheel of Genre, the show for readers who, when it comes to 1960s science fiction, are a bunch of crybabies. Each week we spin the wheel and land on a new genre. Spies, mysteries, horror, romance, SF. It's all on the shelf. And right now we are reading through every short story in Harlan Ellison's 1967 anthology, Dangerous Visions. This time it's Kris Neville's From the Government Printing Office. I'm Zach, and this week I am really interested in how authors self-present their own work and what to do when the author's presentation of what a story means is so misaligned with my own.
That's so great. I'm Bob. I'm really interested in, at face value, this is a stupid story, but I think it might actually be genius. I think this, so it's... You tell what does this mean? What is this story, Zach? Can you summarize it?
Okay, so the story is told from the interior perspective of a little baby who is kind of just doing baby things, but the interior monologue of the baby is like super genius, but the interactions with the parents and what like the baby says to the parents are all like very normal parent baby stuff. But then it also seems to take place in kind of a vaguely dystopian future where children are raised according to like schedules or programs or like sequences of interactions in order to make them like good scientists. It's not that far from like, oh, you want a brilliant child? Just listen to baby Mozart. Like, it's not that different from how many parents today kind of raise up their children. Did I miss anything?
That's basically what it is. I mean, I really wanted to hear how you were going to describe it to see if we're on the same page about it. To me, it's like Rodney Dangerfield trapped in a baby's body. Because it keeps talking about how bad things are happening to it, and it kind of has that tone of voice. But I think there's something really, really interesting about it. The baby is watching these things on the news, and the way it describes it is there are hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of bodies who are just pushed into a hole and then burned, or stacked up and then burned. And he's wondering, okay, what is happening to all these bodies? Why are we killing all of these people? But that is only, happening on the television, kind of. It's not even really a main focus. It's just happening around the baby's peripheral. But the whole story, it feels structured almost like like a chain reaction dream, where but narrated by Rodney Dangerfield, the baby. Now hear me out on that, because the dream is like, okay, the baby wants to go and get candy, but the mother says, no, you can't have any candy. And so the baby goes and tries to get candy somewhere else. Later, the baby goes and watches TV, then argues with its mom, but it's not actually speaking. Then the baby tries to go and get, because it pees, it gets yelled at. It tries and brings all of its clothes down itself in the middle of the night down into the basement to learn how to use the washer. It's, of course, a future washer. That doesn't work. The washer starts eating all of the baby's clothes, or the baby's blankets. The baby has to go and wake up the parents and gets yelled at again. It feels like a weird nightmare, but it's the baby's life. Now, and
it ends with, and I can't wait to turn 4.
Yes, but I think it's very stupid, but I think it really is. There's something so interesting about this, because the author says, okay, in the afterword, he says, I have tried to project a future in which the education of children involves striking terror into their hearts in the hopes of producing more creative individuals. Perhaps this is not what we've always done, because we've had all these fairy tales that are terribly gruesome. However, it feels kind of different. These are really just, first, they're just bad parents. They're just parents that are really mean to this poor baby. They keep saying, you filthy little shit. They're very not nice people. However, the baby starts telling us, I know what I'm going through. I know that I am being, my character is being developed by all of these experiences. I know that's what my parents are trying to do, because that's what they do. That's what these big, what does he call them? The big dudes, or the big, I can't remember what weird name he has for the adults. Oh, the big bastards. That's what it is. So that's what these big bastards do. They try and break you down so they can build you up. But I think what he says is so interesting. Oh my God, I just want to forget. I can't wait to be 4 so I can start forgetting all of this. I know that it's creating me, but I am excited to forget it. I've already forgotten the first feeling of thinking that my parents love me. Now, knowing that I can forget, I hope that I can forget all of this abuse that is shaping me. And I think that's so interesting as a science fiction idea of we've created a society where parents know by the schedule or by, parenting techniques, how to create this, what does he even call it? A creative individual. How to create a creative individual. You scare the hell out of the person. And then to do it systematically. I think it's so interesting. Do you think, am I over reading this? Is it just a stupid story?
Well, I think that you over reading it is what the author's intention is for you to do.
I've been duped.
Well, I mean, all right. So if you didn't get the author telling you that I've tried to project a future in which the education of children involves striking terror into their hearts in hopes of producing more creative individuals, that's a big thesis statement. I don't know if I had just read the story, if I would have gotten that at all. Like, at all. But hearing you describe it, hearing you talk through it actually makes me more interested in the idea than when I read the author just say that sentence and I got kind of like baffled by it. Mm-hmm. I mean, honestly, like the texture of this story feels to me more like a Family Guy Stewie Griffin subplot than it does like any kind of dystopian novel, whatever. Like you got a genius baby who's foiled by dumb parenting. But let's take seriously the idea. And I think that what is being unsaid here is that more creative individuals, maybe the author is implying that they have worse childhoods than more like well-adapted people. So the idea is that, these parents want a more creative baby, so they are just going to terrorize this baby. It's not out of negligence that they are being bad parents. It's out of like, a parenting manual on how to raise, a Van Gogh or something like that. And that's like kind of a interesting dystopia where people actively misraise children in hopes of greatness rather than everyone aims to be a good parent, and then the people who misfire happen to produce great artists. But it's not very explicit.
Well, okay, I really like this idea of, this is probably just Look Who's Talking or Stewie Griffin, but let's give it a chance. So giving it a chance, I think it's extremely Freudian because we have things where he starts talking about being castrated. He says, there must be some reason they want to cut my penis off. I heard them say once that all your real education takes place before you're 4 years old. By then your character is established. I think maybe I'll make it. It's still such a long ways off, so long, but maybe I really will make it, even if I'm a nervous wreck. So this baby's very conscious of what's happening to it, And there's this idea of going through this castration complex, this idea of everything that's going to matter for you for the rest of your life happens all before you're 4. All of the neuroses that you'll take with you are, in these formative experiences. But I think this idea of him wanting to become a scientist, this idea of all of these bodies being burned on TV, and then they're trying to fix it because the baby, basically in like baby language, is having conversations with their father, but he's talking like Rodney Dangerfield or Stewie Griffin, and the father's just kind of going like this. However, they say that once we give you that personality, first we got to give you the personality. Then we got to fix it so you can be the kind of man you want to be. Then after that, you get to go to school. Then he says, if you're going to go to school, you should become a scientist. This baby really wants to know how this weird machine that's killing people, how it works. And so he says, okay, I want to go and become a scientist, but I have to take a course from the government. And the father says, the course from the government is called How to Make Scientists, how to shape personalities who want to understand how things work. Now, while it feels just like this silly baby talking story, I think it is interesting to think about, okay, if Freud is right and if Freudian theory is still affecting us and if we do have all these neuroses because we were 4 and, whatever, then if we take that and we turn it into how we build society on purpose, what are the effects? Are they going to be really dangerous, where all of these bodies are being burned? Is it going to turn the whole society completely neurotic, completely violent? Or is it going to be effective? You now have a course called How to Be a Scientist. And if you go down that track, you'll become a scientist. Is it somehow extremely efficient, yet somehow extremely violent, kind of horrendous? So I think that is kind of an interesting science fiction look at a old psychoanalytic theory, and it's given us this terrifying world of Stewie Griffin.
Well, an interesting thing is that the mom contrasted those bodies being burned kind of with, like, as being other than herself. Like, I think what she said was something along the lines of, like, oh, they breed like flies and they don't have food to feed their children or something like that. But when she says that, I get the feeling that she doesn't view herself in this way. So, like, her one child is very different than people who are just reproducing, copy paste more and more people. But I do think you're right in, highlighting out like the castration complex aspect of this. And I mean, they really are trying to instill every neurosis they possibly can in this child before they're 4. But, something interesting is that it seems to be working, right? Like they have a genius baby. And furthermore, everything this child does is arguably kind of brilliant. Like they're like opening drawers looking for candy, but they're describing things in the drawer from like an alien perspective. Like, oh, what's that? Oh, is that a key? I wonder what that does. I wonder how that works. Like they have a very curious, searching mind that wants to know how everything works. And they apparently also have a very reasonable mind. They wet themselves, so they, go run the laundry. I mean, at 3.5 years old, like there's a very logical procession of their thought. So despite everything about this story, it would seem like these methods do work. Like it is producing the kind of child that they were intending to.
Producing the kind of child they were intending to. I want to take you on a chain reaction dream, Zach, because I think we could look at it 2 different ways. Okay, they're getting the child that they want because that child is doing genius things. He even says, you can't tell me there's no candy in that drawer. I know there's candy in there. You got all sorts of weird stuff in there, Mom. They've succeeded. Or that kid will eventually forget everything because he says, I'm really looking forward to forgetting. I wonder if that also means he'll forget this kind of, what would you call it, precocious intelligence, or this kind of consciousness that is not what we would usually expect of a 3-year-old. But I wonder if young people, this young, have a certain awareness of things until they are broken down and they become 4. And then these parents have instilled some other kind of creativity where you go to How to Be a Scientist school, and then you become a scientist who just does a good little scientist job. It reminds me, because there's a Martian colony that's also just hinted at in this story. So in this future, humans have created this great colony on Mars, and it's just kind of in the background. But it reminds me of that Cordwainer Smith story. I can't actually remember the name of it, but China decides to send its whole population into Venus and just says, here's a bunch of parachutes, good luck everyone. And then, 85% of people just burn up on impact, but they say, we're going to be the first ones there. And I think that was an interesting story where we have this new systematic approach to producing something, with people as kind of an instrument to produce something. And I wonder, have these parents, yes, produced this precocious, this genius child who will retain its genius after 4? Or is there something now in the society, or is, he even critiquing our society, is Neville critiquing our society? Have we instrumentalized people so when they turn 4, they forget everything, and they want to forget everything because being ushered into society in this way is too traumatizing?
I think it is actually very comparable to how people raise children today. So I was just talking to someone actually yesterday who is raising 2 kids here in China. And what he said was basically he's trying to immigrate, or for him return, for his family immigrate back to the United States because he doesn't want his children raised in a school system where the only thing they do is just study, try to become the best engineer or computer programmer or, whatever job they're reaching for. He doesn't want that to be their entire childhood. He wants to raise them, in California where they can surf, where they can skate, where they can play baseball, things like that. I guess the point I'm trying to make is we're not that far away from the world that's being described here. I think that maybe the real point of extremity with this, the real point where this pushes on reality, is the fact that what these parents are doing takes place entirely before the age of 4 years old. But I think that, I don't know. I've never raised kids younger than 4, so I don't know.
I think that's an interesting thing to think about is education. And that's what really Neville is really cares about in this story, because he says education is what inspired him to write this. He also says, in my view, children are our most important product and should be better handled. But in any event, one need only listen closely to the speech of children to hear the history of the future. It's interesting, he's kind of making a joke about, this kid who can talk like an adult, but also the idea of children as a product is kind of interesting here too. Do you have your kids study until 10 p.m., or do you have them explore different things? What is the limit of freedom you can give them? Because if we look at my education in the U.S., it was horrific. I was doing who God knows what. But then the kids here, a lot of them they're doing the bushiban, they go and study. And then my delightful, really funny, fun students sometimes just look so tired. And I wonder, what's the trade-off? Are they getting the studies they need to become who they need to be or who they want to be? Or is it making them fall asleep in class while we're trying to play a game?
Yeah.
So it's tough being a kid, especially before you're 4.
Yeah. Well, let's keep this story in our back pocket for when we pop out some youngins and we can think about it in more depth. We could return to it as we are, doing that whole thing. All right. I'll talk to you later, Bob.
Talk to you later, Zach, when we have our own little Rodney Dangerfields.
Oh, God bless him.